Matcha, Prince's chambers. The prince stared at the holographic display of the entire principality. There were dozens upon dozens of red dots across as many systems across territories, with their respective allegiances marked for him to see. He'd dispatched several diplomatic envoys to various neutral houses, but, as he feared, most of them retained their neutrality with little inclination to change their stance anytime soon. It would take a remarkable falling out or repercussions for them to be swayed one way or the other. Regardless, he couldn't do anything about those houses. Their support would be greatly welcomed, but ultimately there were greater problems at hand. With Duchess Sylvia Emerald, his 4 cousins, and his treacherous brother Alexander now standing against him and Duke Draymore, suspicious movements had been detected. Reports from stranded agents and slow-traveling rumors had all but confirmed that the Duchess had contracted several mercenary ships and groups from outside Principality space to supplement her forces. Then there was the fact that while his uncle had the clear upper hand, he had yet to move in force to any location. Granted, he knew most of his active vessels were deployed across strategic points and systems across Kalen, Winfield, Astor, and Valto territories, keeping their forces pinned and planet-bound. But he should have more than enough ships and personnel to push forward. There had to be a reason for him to avoid true confrontation and keep their battles as mere skirmishes. Consolidating his forces was one thing, but to avoid pushing on his clear military advantage made no sense. "What are you planning, Uncle?" he asked, his voice barely louder than a whisper, as in his mind a chessboard appeared, with his king appearing with only 2 bishops and some pawns to protect him, while his contender had twice as many pieces, and most of his major and minor pieces still on the field. The game could end quickly with such an imbalance, but his contender refused to make a decisive move. It was confounding. "My liege?" Lukacs Ishtal asked, peering his attention away from his datapad. "Pay no heed to my ramblings," the prince said, crossing his arms. He focused his attention back on the display, frowning with disgust. Many of the red dots were not caused by skirmishes against Draymore loyalists. Rather, several pirate groups, syndicates, and seditious elements had taken advantage of the situation and ramped up their assaults, either from hidden outposts, fallen systems, or exterior systems outside Principality-claimed space. The chaos around them emboldened them all. It wasn't consuming the entire Principality. Not even close, but the territories involved were relentlessly put to the test. For a moment, he focused on Kayston territory, and, with a thought, the map zoomed in until the Fanher system and a few neighboring systems were displayed. He frowned. "Tell me the truth, Juliana. Should I have stopped Clara from embarking on yet another dangerous mission?" Juliana Winfield, standing behind him, replied with a tiny, distant smile. "You are as terrible a brother and I am a sister, my prince. I could have said something against it, but I didn't. The old man is with them. He will keep them alive, if nothing else." The prince inhaled deeply and slowly, then sighed. "I owe my uncle so much already. What a curse it must be, to serve another prince after losing one already. A prince who is no more than a shadow of Joseph Astor. Taken from us due to my stupidity, recklessness, and blind ambition." He narrowed his eyes. "What happened wasn't your fault," Juliana replied, taking a step closer to place a hand on his shoulder. "It was an accident." "It brings me little relief, no matter how true that may be," the prince replied, reaching with his right hand to grip Juliana's hand resting on his left shoulder. He gave it a squeeze, then cleared his throat. "Do you think they'll be able to kill Raventomb?" "I think they will try their damnedest to end that parasite that has threatened the Principality for decades," Juliana replied. "The totem is forever in a precarious position, is it not?" The prince barely managed to restrain himself from scoffing. "The totem has become eroded and weak." In that regard, Duke Cornelius was correct. A sigh escaped his lips. "Alexander has arisen from obscurity, threatening a blade against my throat, seeking the throne that does not belong to him. Of all my siblings, aside from Caldro, I wouldn't trust Alexander with the position of prince were he my last option," he said with sadness and disappointment. "Caldro, Megan, Ruby, and Leon are in my uncle's grasp, hidden somewhere unknown. And of Giovanni, we know nothing. I don't even have the luxury to know if he's dead, captured, or merely hiding," he chuckled darkly. It would be a cruel, twisted joke to learn that Duke Ykanti has Giovanni in his care, and by this time tomorrow he will rise as another contender for the throne. And of my cousins none have come to my side. Sebastian, Harry, Lorcana, Capri will remain by their mother's side. Ismael, Reginald, and Emilia wouldn't dare leave their cushy positions and decadent, never-ending parties, banquets, and traveling. I wonder what Uncle Oscar has planned for their futures. They're too much like Grandfather Olbert. Veronica would never dare go against her father. Gabriel. He's my only unknown, the prince finished with tiredness. House Winfield stands with you always, my prince, Juliana proclaimed. And House Astor is forever grateful for the loyal service and friendship our houses share, he replied with a tiny smile, never turning to face the blue-haired older woman. A small beep caught his attention, followed by a murmur from Lukacs. What have you found, Lukacs? Nothing, my prince, Lukacs replied, eyes narrowing. Ilidor Faduli's records are what one would expect from an underachieving noble lord. Up until recently, his record was devoid of any significant points of interest, in both terms of outstanding achievements and grave faults or scandals. No particular aptitudes were ever displayed. On the contrary, he showed no signs of skill or intellect above the average. Slightly under, in fact. And yet, Lukacs narrowed his eyes. Shortly after his integration into the logistical division, he showcased a streak of significant contributions that have, admittedly, aided our Central Command's logistical processes. The prince hummed softly. Could he truly be a natural in his field? An undiscovered talent even to him? It would be hardly an uncommon occurrence. It happens all the time. My brother Yendol discovered his talent for surfing, swimming, and underwater combat by his late teens by mere happenstance. Unexpected talent can spawn from anyone, be they noble or commoner, it matters not. Paired with measured ambition, great things can be achieved, Juliana said, earning a nod from the violet-eyed man. It wouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility. A likelihood? But I'm uncertain, Lukacs countered. When I evaluated him, I saw no gaps in his story. He didn't deliver a practiced speech, but there was little else to show for in terms of flaws or nervousness. Could he be an agent of sorts? A mere useful pawn by a true agent lurking among the shadows where we can't detect their presence? Juliana asked. I dare not say, Juliana. His sudden burst of talent is what drove me to interview him myself instead of sending him straight to Vivian. I have my suspicions, but I have no evidence, Lukacs lamented. What if he truly is merely talented in his field? He would be a welcome addition to our personnel, the prince offered. There have been a few would-be spies and other petty traitors captured. Laughable attempts. If force is needed, I'll provide such aid, Lukacs. My prince, give me the order and I'll have the man brought for interrogation, Juliana offered. If this man truly is a traitor agent, then he'll expect aggression unleashed against him, and we'll lose him before we can do anything. If he's a mere tool, then the true puppet master will be watching and will go dark yet again, putting him away from our grasp. If he's a talented man, such an action would complicate his position, and will lose his talent. His position within House Faduli is low, but he is rapidly gaining merit. It would be unwise to bring discord to Marchioness Amelia's capital world without due evidence, don't you think so, Juliana? Ishtal asked, crossing his arms and giving the woman a knowing look. And this is why I'm not the heiress apparent of House Winfield. I detest politics, no matter how much they're needed, Juliana scoffed. Speaking of bringing discord to Matcha, Lukacs, have you made headway into the warning given by Princess Clara? Lukacs nodded once. Her worries ring true. Whoever was responsible for Frederick Anderson's death was highly talented. There is no doubt. I've also concluded that such an agent is still here in Matcha. Somewhere. I don't know which possibility is worse. That an agent of such level is at the service of Duke Draymore, or that this agent is of Arabian origin. The implications alone are worrying. Implications or not, we will not stand idle, the prince said, turning to Lukacs. Commander Lukacs, remain vigilant of Ilidor Faduli's actions, but do not be overly inquisitive. Allow him to join the logistical division and put him under Vivian's command, not directly, but close enough for all to see. Let hubris be his downfall if he truly is a traitor in any capacity. If he isn't, then we've lost nothing and gained a fine peace." "It shall be done, my prince," said Lukacs with a curt bow. "In other matters, my prince, we've successfully pushed against Draymore ghost AIs infesting the network. Emerald countermeasures are in full effect, and while our own ghost AIs are being affected, it is nothing compared to—" Suddenly, the eyes of the silvery-haired man flickered. "Excuse me, my prince? I've received a notification that the Diviners delegation is requesting to exchange words, my liege." On screen. "They would show themselves when our previous interactions were through audio and messaging only?" the prince asked, surprised. He peered at Juliana, who also shared his puzzlement. Lukacs nodded slowly, eyes still flickering. "They also profess many apologies, my liege, for not contacting you before. They were in deep communion, whatever that means, and couldn't break until less than an hour ago. Give the representatives my regards and that there is no need to apologize. Also grant access to their request." "I will speak to them here," the prince ordered, as the holographic display died out and a large screen behind it came to life. For a moment, he saw a symbol he'd only seen in history records, a large circle with an inverted triangle within it, as it, too, held within it a four-pointed star and, finally, a second, smaller circle inside that star and a single dot inside it, giving the illusion of an unblinking eye on a simple white background. The lines were a light, gentle purple like lavender, as a trio of unfurled, simple banners of blue, green, and pink swayed on an invisible, calm breeze at each side of the central symbol. No words were present, no further decorations or proclamations were needed. The symbol remained only for a few seconds until a man wearing a mask that obscured everything except his mouth replaced it. The mask was almost entirely circular and smooth, with elegantly carved symbols on its surface that he didn't know the meaning of. He was also wearing a long khaki robe that revealed his bronze skin in some open patches. His robes, like the helmet, bore the same symbols. He recognized the four-pointed star and the eye at its center, taking precedence, though. Behind him, he could see a white room beautifully decorated with plants, what appeared to be a sand garden, a wooden desk, paintings and banners hanging from the walls, pots, jars, and incense burners, while small, roaming, strange animals scurried along. "Greetings, Prince," said the man before the prince could speak. "I thank you for accepting our apologies. We are ready to enter your domain at your behest." The prince cleared his throat while Juliana and Lukacs stared in disbelief at the casual disrespect flung by the robed man. "Greetings to you as well, my good man. Is there a title with which I may call you by?" "Grand Seer will be fine. If not, you may call me by name." "Leg." "Whichever you prefer for the remainder of this meeting," Leg said, moving his hands up to chest level, forcing a strange symbol or gesture with his fingers. "The princess I've come to speak with is aware of our coming. We seek only the permission to enter. Is it given?" "It is given," the prince said, his eyes flickering. "I've sent you a royal permit that will allow you access to the entirety of the principality as foreign diplomats. Present it wherever you go, and you will be granted all the hospitality the Astorian Principality can bestow upon you, alongside protections and privileges your status carries until your departure." "The hospitality of the Raven will not be needed, Prince, but it is welcome all the same," Leg replied, turning to face his right to something or someone unseen. After a few short seconds, he turned his attention back to the screen. "We bid you farewell, Prince." "I beg your pardon?" the prince asked, confused. "We've yet to discuss the location and the time for your audience with my sister. It will take several days at the very least to decide such matters." Leg tilted his head slightly to the side. "Turmoil stirs within your nation. There is no need to concern yourself with such matters, Prince. For we already know where we are to go." The blond man exchanged confused looks with Lukacs and Juliana. Frowning, he took a step forward. "You already know? How can that be, Grand Seer?" Leg's hands moved, creating another symbol. The communion revealed much. "The whispers of the ether have shown us the way. Once again, we thank you for your hospitality and kindness, Prince. May you find clarity within your internal struggle," he said, as if that explained everything. Then, before the prince could say anything else, the link was ended. There was silence for several seconds, Then Juliana let out a cracked growl of displeasure. I've never heard such convoluted, nonsensical idiocy in my entire life. The prince's frown deepened. Convoluted nonsense or not, the Diviners lived up to their reputation of being oddly gentle, warm, but distant and uncaring of anything but their own affairs. Seeing them in the flesh, figuratively speaking, only raised more questions than answers. Just what exactly do they want with Clara? He asked himself. No answer came to him. Fanner system? Noir Navio? War room? Motherless whore spawns! Redford, now wearing his combat armor, cursed as the holographic display was centered around Rankov. The battle had commenced almost an hour ago, and the outcome was painfully in line with their earlier predictions. Clara, clad in her purple combat armor, glared slightly when another ship from the defense fleet blinked out from the display. Raventomb's forces were brutish but efficient and direct, and that was as much as she was willing to praise about them. Once Redford had decided the final course of action, the two commanding officers of her two corvettes returned to their ships. The Reaper's Eye immediately broke formation and moved to scout ahead. By the time it reached a point where it could reliably detect the entirety of the pirate fleet, the battle had already started. In a crude imitation of the Royal Navy's doctrines, Raventomb's fleet divided itself into three groups, slowly positioning his ships to surround the station and the defense fleet, while scout ships began to counter defensive satellites. In a move that astonished her and even Redford, the pirates unleashed hordes of drones and fighters. Their organization left much to be desired, but they were no less deadly as they eliminated satellite after satellite. By the time the fleet was in range, the station deployed its fighter complement and unleashed waves of missiles and laser fire upon the attackers. The defense fleet didn't venture far from the protection the station provided as they began supporting it, adding their firepower. Numerous pirate drones and some of their fighters fell, but none of their ships moved to strike at the fleet or the station. Instead, they revealed their bombers and gunships while missiles whittled down the station's shields, their numbers far too great for the PD turrets to counter, as for each missile destroyed, 3 made it through. It was clear that Raventomb was an experienced raider, for when the shields gave out, he sent drones forward to make suicidal runs, ramming themselves against the station's defenses and weapons. One by one, PD turrets, missile pods, laser turrets, and even their railguns were silenced one by one, the clear prelude to a boarding action instead of total destruction, once haywire mines ensured the station wouldn't be able to overload its plasma generators. The defense fleet tried to repel the invaders, but it stood no chance against the pirates, who had surrounded the station and thus the fleet before pouncing on their targets. Fighters and drones engaged in dogfights, yet despite being of lower quality, there were simply too many pirate small craft, numbering nearly 5,000 in total. That was without counting the nearly 1,000-strong drones, the numerous bombers, and their 50-odd gunships. The latter being especially eye-opening as several of those gunships were heavily modified and retrofitted haulers. Yet another ship was destroyed, followed shortly by 2 more. The defense fleet, now reduced to only 10 remaining vessels, was doing everything it could to take out as many enemies as it could with them. The civilian ships had been pushed to the front, sacrificed to protect the more valuable ships, no matter how futile their struggle was. In-system defense ships stood their ground, fighting to the last if nothing else. At least most of them were. 4 ships had powered down either through mutiny, boarding takeover, or surrender. The reason was unclear at the moment. The pirates had merely lost 5 of their freighter-class ships and suffered damage to another 3. It was a horrendous tally. "They will be obliterated in short order," Cynthia commented, glaring at the display with contempt and impotence. "They've crippled or disabled most of the defense fleet ships. They'll try to take the functioning ones with them and tear apart the ones they can't steal. Their cores are valuable, and they can even put together a hull around it again," explained Redford with disdain and disgust. 2 more ships were crippled, followed shortly by 3 others in quick succession as another one powered down on its own, surrendering. Another ship exploded, forcing the remaining 3 to overload their cores in a futile attempt to take down their enemies and retain their honor intact. Sadly, only a few fighters and drones were destroyed alongside them, nothing more. Despicable, meritless, reproachable, detestable curs, Clara proclaimed coldly and devoid of empathy or mercy. Redford's eyes flickered, then he connected his incoming call with the screen. On it, several images appeared featuring large, heavy freighters, several classes and models of freighters, frigates, corvettes, and several other civilian-class ships. Most worryingly were the 3 light destroyers, the largest heavy freighters, and Raventomb's flagship, neatly protected by several other vessels creating a defensive sphere around it. Lieutenant Commodore Tallulah Finnegan sends confirmation of all pirate vessels. 58 freighters, ranging from small to large. 26 frigate-class ships. 19 corvette-class ships. 8 heavy freighters near the 2-kilometer mark. 3 dedicated light destroyers. And 1 heavy cruiser, Redford said, clutching his hands into fists. Their small craft number close to 6,000. 121 bombers. 57 gunships. This is a veritable invasion force capable of locking down a system. And who knows how many group troops, mechanized, armored, and artillery units they have at their disposal. How, in the name of Tobias Winfield, did they manage to get their hands on 8 heavy freighters, 3 light destroyers, and 1 heavy cruiser? Cynthia asked, astonished by the revealed numbers. Regular pirate bands and groups rely on capturing and repurposing ships. But Raventomb? He has a meager empire spanning 12 systems. Their production is limited to what is necessary for survival and everyday needs. People still need to eat, drink, and rest. Work will be done, for they need to sustain themselves on at least a basic level. Redford's eyes narrowed. Yet there will always be room to fix and repair. They may not be able to produce true warships, but they can repair and maintain them better than others, for they have the means to do so. I wouldn't be surprised if, aside from their crude industrial capacities, they have fabricators at their disposal and captured intellectuals such as engineers and scientists, forcing them to work for them. Enslaving, butchering cowards, Cynthia snarled. I share your anger, Cynthia, said Redford. Fortunately for us, their designs are civilian in nature. Heavily retrofitted, but outclassed by a true warship. Individually, they barely qualify as subpar, outdated patrol vessels. It would take 3 of their ships to match 2 Principality patrol standard ships of equivalent class. We don't know the full extent of their armaments, but I'd be surprised if they have more than a couple of missile boats and escort-worthy vessels. He paused for a moment, enlarging the images of the heavy freighters, the light destroyers, and Raventomb's flagship. But those ships are the true danger in their fleet. The heavy freighters alone can match a destroyer of the line each in terms of firepower, and yet they also act as a weaker version of a carrier-class cruiser. Those light destroyers have been retrofitted to be as close to warships as possible. But that heavy cruiser? That's a true warship of Royal Navy design. How did he get his hands on it? The aged commander asked no one. They're moving again, Clara said as she saw the pirate small craft move back to their respective ships. Just as her uncle said, now that the defense fleet had been dealt with, the pirate fleet was forming into 2 groups. The largest, led by Raventomb, was already turning to intercept and engage the coming Caiston reinforcements. The second group remained slowly circling the conquered station. There was plenty of plunder to be had from it, after all. A pale comparison to the planet, but there was bound to be information about Rankov, potential targets, coordinates to valuable resources and machinery, and more that they could use. How were they able to field that many small craft? Asked Cynthia, as she saw the vast majority of those tiny dots slowly merge with a larger one. They were returning to their hangars. Over 1,000 of them, including a score of bombers and 30 of their gunships, nevertheless, remained in tiny clusters around the 28 ships that stayed behind, including 2 of the heavy freighters. Freighters are designed to have plentiful space and a minimal crew. Pirates are crafty, if nothing else. Desperation, ingenuity, insanity, ambition, and greed are powerful driving factors. Attaching drones to the exterior hull also increases their potential firepower and gives them a numerical advantage, replied the gray-eyed man. Quantity is worthless against quality, protested Clara. Yet quantity is a quality of its own. Even a mighty battleship would fall against inferior enemies if they have large enough numbers, countered Redford, his voice firm and steady. Crossing his arms, he received a communication request. Opening the link directly through the ship's systems, the voice of Galt Tyrome echoed in the room. "Commander, I apologize for my sudden request, but I must inform you of a discovery I made." Galt paused for a moment, awaiting admonishment. When it didn't come, he continued, "Sir, I ran a core signature correlation with our records, and I got a match for that heavy cruiser. Commander, it's the Bulwark of Valor, a decommissioned line cruiser from the Third Fleet after the incursion of Calgamonia 23 years ago." Redford's left eye twitched for a moment before he closed his eyes and took a big, calming breath. Exhaling slowly, he opened his eyes. "Thank you, Lieutenant Galt. Keep me informed of any new developments," he said, killing the connection. "It would seem that Ezket is far more capable than I imagined. The alternatives are disheartening." "Could that honorless viper, Tamarin Caiston, be behind Ezket's power?" Clara asked, eyes narrowed. "Unlikely. Tamarin Caiston, reprehensible as he may be, would never deal with a pirate lord. Sponsoring pirates as deniable mercenaries or using them as unscrupulous muscle against rival houses or guilds is nothing new. This is another beast altogether, Clara. Tamarin isn't an imbecile. Someone gave Ezket that ship, and he retrofitted it over the years to the point of transforming it into a heavy cruiser." "But who over 2 decades ago?" Redford answered, then shook his head. "We can find answers after his death, and we can bring an end to this pointless succession dispute. For now, we will focus on the matter at hand," Redford pressed on. "Our window of opportunity to lure Raventomb into a deadly ambush was destroyed by the arrival of the reinforcements, yet the goal remains the same. After we inflict all the damage we can upon the raiding pirate forces, we'll move against Raventomb's fleet as they are engaged with the Caiston reinforcements." With a thought, the display shifted from Rankov to the rushing reinforcements. The details were not yet clear, but their core signatures were enough to provide a rough estimate of their total forces. 23 frigate-class ships, 28 corvette-class, 11 destroyer-class, likely a mix between missile boats and scout categories, 2 heavy destroyers, and a line cruiser. The reinforcement fleet was separating into smaller groups, 4 standard Scout Vanguard squadrons, each consisting of 5 ships, and 3 line groups, with the heavy destroyers and the line cruiser at the center of the formations, each escorted by 14 vessels. It was a good, solid, tested standard deployment. But it wouldn't stand against Raventomb's superior numbers and non-standard strategies. The most worrying unknown was how many fighters and other small craft the reinforcements had at their disposal. Even at the best estimation in his mind, Redford concluded that, at best, the Caiston reinforcements could field a third of the total small craft they were going to face off against. His only consolation was that they would likely be equipped with Raptor fighters, giving them a better chance in battle and a clear superiority over the shoddy pirate fighters. His heart, filled with resolve and conviction, decided it was time to commence operations. Uncrossing his arms, his eyes flickered. "Galt, ready Stapleyan assaults to launch at my command. Targets will be designated accordingly at my discretion. Commence the general alert. All units ready your stations." He paused for a moment, allowing a small smile to curl his lips. "Lieutenant Commodore Wyatt Staples." "Engage,"